and welcome to episode 118 of the Dive Down, Magic the Gathering podcast focused on the latest decks, trends, and strategies for the casual spike.
Wait,
my name is Shane.
Who are you?
I'm Shane.
What are you doing?
I'm Shane here in Denver.
What?
Shane here in Denver.
Okay.
The one and only Shane Beeps, and with me on the line from Chicago, Illinois, is the one and only Godfather, Dave Harbarger.
I feel strange.
There's a disturbance. We have never done an episode with just Dave and me. I don't know how we pulled that off.
The weirdest part about that is that people may know that Shane and I have known each other for 35-ish years.
Sounds right.
Yeah. And we're from the same hometown. And we're the people that knew each other when this whole podcast thing started. And yet somehow we realized today we have never done a show with the two of us. So we asked Stan to just take a hike for the day.
Yeah, Stan is under the weather.
Yeah.
He's not feeling too hot. So get better soon, Stan. But you're going to get 2 weeks in a row of just two of us. I'm not going to sing the song this time.
You've never sung it for me, though.
Dave, it's just the two of us. We got so many cards to talk about. So many cards this week. This week's episode.
Yeah, wait. It has a very special theme that I wanted to ask you about.
Okay.
My theme for this episode, we're going to play a little version of one of my favorite games from a recent podcast that I've been very into called Blank Check. We're going to play a version of the box office game.
Blank Check with Shane and David.
Exactly. Okay, so my theme for this episode is inspired by the sixth highest grossing film of 1986. Do you know what that is off the top of your head?
So the theme for this episode, some kind of school-based thing.
Mm-hmm. It features a cameo from Kurt Vonnegut.
Oh man, that throws me for a loop. It's 86. It's not Tom Hanks and Big. You just have to tell me, man.
The climactic scene at the end of the movie involves a diving competition with the triple Lindy.
What? Like into a pool?
Yeah. So it's got diving, and the movie is called Back to School, Shane.
Oh, okay.
With Rodney Dangerfield.
So God, Rodney Dangerfield. I feel like Rodney Dangerfield, we're eating into precious seconds of the podcast, I know, but Rodney Dangerfield is definitely one of those movie stars that I think is like, I'm just a little bit too young for. Like, I guess you can appreciate like his particular style of humor, but I think it was for people who are like, what, in their like late 40s now, you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess since I remember seeing that movie very clearly, I must be in my late 40s and you must be in your early 40s.
Yeah. 1 year difference.
Only 1 year different. Exactly. But yes, the theme of this week is back to school. And just like an old man going back to university, Rodney Dangerfield in the plot of that movie, Shane and I are old men going back to Wizard College.
Yeah. I mean, my Wizard College was in 1995 or so. And then I dropped out, and then came back to finish up my GRE in 2014 with cons. And so it's good to revisit those old primers, go back to class, learn a few things.
Yeah, I mean my Wizard College was a lot like the plot of the seasons 1 through 4 of The Magicians, which is a show that Shane loves very much.
Oh man! All right. On this week's episode, as Dave teed up so nicely, we're going to briefly look at the historic and standard split Kaldheim Championship, get a last look at the tournament level historic metagame. Then we're going to head into the good stuff. Spoilers, Strixhaven spoilers are arriving at a steady clip. We're going to go through the first barrage of these, see what piques our interest in modern, pioneer, and historic. And speaking of historic, there's a few cards from Strixhaven that we think are going to have some impact. We're going to save those for the end of the episode. First, some housekeeping. We've got new patrons of the Dive Down Nation citizens. Welcome. We have Riker and Bert W. Bert W., I know you're coming back again. I appreciate you rejoining, you're rekindling your citizenship. We stamped that visa, let you back in. No new
Bert
reviews
just wants
this week.
those shout outs on the podcast over and over again.
Bert's just like, look, I just keep coming back.
Yeah.
No new reviews this week. If you have something good to say, constructive to say, head on over to Apple Podcasts or whatever and give us some feedback. We appreciate it.
Yeah. And if you would like to join our Patreon with one of the most fun Slack channels in all of Magic, and I don't even know how many Slack channels there are out there of Magic Slack servers, you can check us out at patreon.com/thedivedown. where $1 per episode will get you access to our Slack community of merry bandits.
Yeah, awesome folks. I was just thinking about this like yesterday, I think, about just, I was on a little remote staycation, rented like a little Airbnb, got some takeout food, stuff like that with my wife. And every time I would kind of recheck my phone, I'd just be like, man, there's people said so much. There's so much happening on the Slack server. I'm like, man, we have a lot of regulars. We have a lot of people who pop in from time to time. I love every new addition to the community. So yeah, if you've got a little bit of cash to spare, want to meet your fellow citizens in the nation, head on over to patreon.com/thedivedown. We also, of course, are supported by Mana Traders. Go to manatraders.com, use sign-up code THEDIVEDOWN, all one word, get 15% off your first 3 months of Magic online card rental. Mana Traders rules, you know about it probably. But yeah, if you're still thinking about signing up, use the Dive Down, save some cash. Also, untapped.thedivedown.com. You can download the Untapped Arena Assistant. You know, tracks all your games. Like I said, I tracked my games today. I streamed for about 2 hours on this the Dive Down _Shane on Twitch. I don't like tracking my stuff because then I see that I'm like 5-5 after spending 2 hours and I get anywhere on the ladder. But yeah, it gives us a little kickback. Thanks for going there and checking it out.
You know, it's a good way to not track your stuff and not feel bad about it.
Mobile?
Play on your iPad. Yeah, which is what I've been doing a lot the last week. Losing and not caring.
If you don't know, it feels good.
Exactly. In my mind, I'm still at 78% win rate that I was back in February or whatever that was. So,
yeah, man, if you don't look, everything's fine. All right, I promised a quick breakdown, and let's deliver that, hopefully. Yeah.
There was a Pro Tour this weekend.
Yeah, a set championship.
Yeah.
The Kaldheim Championship. In quotes from the WotC thing to remind you how this works. From qualifier weekends and other online tournaments to the battles of Kaldheim League weekends, it all comes down to this. The Kaldheim split concludes with $250,000 in prizes as the best players across MTG Arena and Magic Online battle to become the next Magic champion at the Kaldheim Championship. So, split standard and historic Swiss, standard in the top 8s. If you liked Sultai Ultimatum, that was a top 8 for you.
Was there a lot?
I think there was like 4 or 5.
Whoa.
Rogues did win. I believe.
Wow. Okay.
It was like Arnie Hauschenberg. I'm sorry for butchering your name. I don't have it in front of me. But he seemed like the interviews with him, he seemed like a quality young gentleman. It's good to have a champion like him, I think. So more props to him for winning. He also played Orzhov Auras in Historic, I know that. So what I really wanted to do, it's kind of the end of Standard and Historic. We don't really want to focus too much on it, especially because we have so many cards to talk about. But what I do want to talk about quickly is kind of the meta, and then a few interesting decks that came out of that. So the meta was kind of mostly what we would have expected, I think. Like there was Jun Food at 26.5. Orzhov Auras, probably a little bit of surprise at 14.7. Then we kind of had, Blue-White Control at 8.5, Gruul at 5, Jun Company at 5, Goblins, Bant Control, Sultai Ultimatum, and this Abzan quote-unquote mid-range deck, all at 3.8%.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a second.
I mean, the biggest surprise to me, like you said, was Orzhov Auras at 14% of the metagame, which is a deck that we've talked about a bunch of times on here, talking about how it always has favorable stats and untapped, but nobody ever seems to get it beyond about 3% of the metagame on untapped.
Yeah, and all of a sudden people just were like, it's time to play. Time to play some Orzhov Auras.
Pros know what's up with it.
Man, when I didn't watch much of the stream. I kind of flipped through day 2 and caught a few historic matches here and there. Every time I saw someone playing auras, it was just the same busted aura stuff that you expect. Where it's just like, hey, I'm suiting up my creature who was like a 3/5 the previous turn is now a 14/17 flyer and you're dead. It's just like bonkers.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me still. The snowball potential of that deck is is still lower to me than the blue-white version because there's so many auras that pump in the blue-white version where you really have to get all the glitters to get your creature super huge in the black-white one. But black does have all those protection spells, so I'm pretty sure that's the way to go.
Yeah, and the last two decks, Elves at 2.8 and Cycling, Boros Cycling at 2.4. We'll talk about that as well. 20% other. Our best performing decks, this Abzan, again, I'm calling it control. They called it midrange at 63.4%. We'll talk about one reason for that in a second. Orzhov Auras at 60. So yeah, I mean, not only was it very well represented, it also had a typical Orzhov Auras win rate of high 50s to low 60s, killing it. The Cycling deck, 59%. And again, there's probably a good reason for that. Bant Control at 59 as well. And Jund Company at 55. So Bant Control, Abzan, and even the Cycling deck all were playing. What card do you think, Dave? It's Control. Green and white. Green and white.
Is it Yasharn?
Yeah, Sharn. So you don't see Jund Food here in this above 50% win rate area. They were heavily metagamed out. They finished at under 50% win rate on the day, even at such a high percentage of being in the field. So people were prepared for Jund and brought decks that were shored up against Jund Food. And one of those ones I wanted to talk about really quickly was this Abzan midrange deck. Mm-hmm. Again, it sure looks like control to me. It's had a 63.4% win rate, as I said, brought by 8 players. These 8 players. LSV.
Were pretty good.
LSV, Shahar Shanhar, Matt Sperling, Gabe Nassif, Kai Buddha, Reed Duke, Huey Jensen, Yoel Larson. You ever hear of these guys?
I've heard of all of them. I have all of their names tattooed down my arm in a list.
And then you just scratch them off if you ever beat them?
Yeah, exactly.
This deck destroyed the aggro strategies, beat up on the sacrifice engine. It did seem to lose pretty hard to other control strategies, but if you're taking out aggro and sac, you're going to have a pretty good day.
So what all was in this deck? Because this is not something we've seen really. We're used to the 4-color ones that used to have Sultai. There was a little bit of that around, I think, as well. But what was going on here?
So it's a Yorion-based 80-card deck, 3 Yorion main, and 1 is the companion.
They really wanted it.
Yeah. 4 Yasharn, of course. Provide that mana, stop the sacrifice engines, and paying life, which is surprisingly important.
Yeah.
Like I was playing today on stream. I had 2 red sources in my mind. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I attacked into Yasharn with an Embercleave in my hand. And then I was like, what? Why couldn't I cast Embercleave? Oh, because Ramunap Ruins pays life.
Yeah.
Yep.
I did a similar thing against this deck where I was playing Mardu Shadow. And I had a Danto Vanguard out, and I was like, I'm going to make my Shadow gigantic, and then it just wouldn't click, and I was like, what's going on?
Wait. Yeah, so Yasharn's very good at various things, specifically, of course, sacrifice, hate. 4 Wall of Blossoms, it's a cycling card that helps against aggro. You know what I mean? It's a 2-mana 0/4. It's going to block a lot of small creatures on curve. Yeah. 4 Knight of Autumn, just to be super flexible.
Wait. Wall Blossoms, the original wall of drawing cards. I just want to make sure everybody understands that. It wasn't Wall of Omens, Wall Blossoms.
I mean, it's green, your favorite.
Mm-hmm.
4 Knight of Autumn, as I said, super flexible. You can block aggressive threats. You can gain life if you're behind. You can blow up a key artifact or enchantment if such a thing's on the board. A lot of enchantment-based removal, as you're going to expect in a Yorion deck. Extinction Event as like Sweeper. Mazebind Tome as additional filtering and life gain. Sideboard has more tools against aggressive strategies and control strategies. You got your Legion End, your Authority of the Councils. You got your Shifting Ceratops. It's uncounterable, and I think Pro Blue. It just looks like it has all these tools that you need to survive against the field, and shoring up that previously sort of bad control matchup against the Jund strategies as well.
So Shane, thanks for the run through of Abzan here. You're one of your favorite color combinations from way back in the day.
Yeah, R.I.P.
Yeah,
Lingering Souls.
Are you going to build this deck?
Well, no, because I'm terrible with decks like this. I think that a good reason that this is 63.4% is 8 of the best players possibly ever. I mean, I don't know. Some of them, these are all like Pro Tour winners, top 8 finishers. These are good players, and also they had a good metagame. If they were heavily tuned against aggro decks and sac, which also is going to make this good on the ladder. But This isn't a deck that I want to play on the ladder and that I could play to its best ability by myself. I'm sure I could learn it. I'm sure I could have a perfectly good win rate with it, but it's just like not my thing because I don't like long games on Arena. I kind of just like, I like that quantity of game, and maybe that's stupid, but this isn't the kind of thing that like, if I win with it, I'm going to feel really awesome. Like I'd much rather be like, yeah, I got that Embercleave got me there.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
No, indeed. How afraid of Yasharn are you in general right now? Are you feeling like you need to play decks to be able to answer the card? Is it a thing you need a sideboard for? Because not every deck can deal with a 4/4 really easily.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too concerned about it as I'm still maining Gruul, honestly. And I do think that you can outclass it with either like a First Striker or an Ember Cleaver or like even like a 4/4 Gruul Spellbreaker type thing. It's not anything you want to see. I mean, they're a little bit behind on curve with just a 4/4, but I think against certain strategies, it does take names and it does a really good job at doing that. So what I think about this deck though too is that we have a very changing metagame coming up. Mm-hmm. I think. So it's like, I don't think I tell people to like mirror this deck, go copy this deck, and waste some wilds on it or spend some wilds on it at least, because we have a lot of changes coming up. As
spoilers.
Yeah. I think everyone knows what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was a smart deck brought by good players. They timed the metagame really well, and I think they paid off. Again, I mentioned also Boros Cycling. This was brought by 5 Hareruya players like Tony Ramis Pascal, Javier Dominguez, Luis Salvato.
Those are good players too.
Yeah. 59.3% win rate. Javier D also made top 8. They had a light splash into green. I mentioned that, I said it was Boros, but they also had Yasharn. They used some of the pathways to get into green for that sideboard Yasharn, ostensibly for fighting the Jund meta that they probably expected. Some additions to this main deck: Sweltering Suns, a couple of those can be cycled away or clear out a threatening board from these go-wide decks that might have shown up. Sideboard's really cool, like Reptilian Reflection, which is a 3-mana enchantment that when you cycle a card can become a 5/4 creature with haste, of course, when a card is cycled. Weird. So that'd probably be pretty good against control strategies, I think.
Yeah, it's like a real form thing.
5/4 is legit. You know what I mean? Like, that's pretty good.
That's big.
The Abandoned Sarcophagus allows for non-land cards with cycling to be cast from the graveyard for some long game value. They even brought back Fry to deal with white and blue creatures and planeswalkers, right? So I think that was a cool deck. I think that we might have more reason to talk about cycling in the near future. Again, we'll get to that later on in the episode. But yeah, that's the metagame as Historic comes to a new set and some new auxiliary cards. So don't want to spend any more time on the breakdown. But yeah, watch this space, and I'm sure we'll have more to talk about in all of our formats coming up. But yeah, let's head on out of here. Head on into the dive down, where we're going to talk about Strixhaven spoilers. So stay with us.
All right, it's that time of year again. It's our favorite time of the year.
Oh my gosh.
We're going back to school. It's spoiler season for Strixhaven.
That's what it's called, Strixhaven, right?
Strixhaven School of Magin. I don't know.
Wizarding School for Wizards and Wizardesses.
What is the subtitle of this, isn't it?
Strixhaven, it's not Harry Potter.
Right. It's also not The Magicians, which is a show that Shane and Stan both love.
Yeah, we love it.
Yeah.
I read the first book, and then I tried to start the second, and I was like, where the heck is this going?
No, yeah. No, the show is better than the books. Anyway, so it's time. We're getting spoiler cards again. It's always fun for us to go through a big dive of cards. The first thing that we do whenever these sets come up, we're going to have 2 weeks of spoilers for this, I'm sure. Next week we'll do another episode, so you'll get to hear some of Stan's takes. But to lay the groundwork, since we just got them the last couple of days, Shane and I want to go through the mechanics to start and talk about the relative potential for the different mechanics that are in the set, see what we think about those, and see what we're keeping an eye on for what could be powerful. So Shane, what's the first one?
All right. Learn and lessons. So learn allows you to, so the learn is the mechanic keyword. I don't really know. It happens when you cast a spell, typically. It can be like an ETB effect or like a resolution effect. So learn allows you to reveal a quote lesson card you own from outside the game and put it into your hand, or you can discard a card to draw a card.
Wait, learn does that too? I totally missed that part of the rules.
I think so. I think they all do that. That was in the flavor text or the mechanic text I read.
Interesting. I mean, it's nice to know that they have moments, a fallback where it still does something even if you don't want to get the card.
Yeah, they have value just inherently in that they're not looters, they are rummagers.
Right.
You discard a card, then draw a card. So the learn example would be like Pop Quiz, which is 2 and a blue for an instant. You draw a card and then learn, and which then again pulls up a lesson from outside the game. A lesson example is something like Introduction to Annihilation, which is 5 generic mana. It's a sorcery. You can exile a target non-land permanent, and its a controller draws a card. Some lessons also appear to be kind of hybrid mana, or just regular old mana, like Pest Summoning is 1 black-green hybrid mana. So that can be used in any deck that uses black or green mana. So the real thing here, I think, Dave, is are there going to be lessons and also learn cards that are kind of cost effective and or flexible enough that you want to run these cards? Because I think the lessons, even right now, after a few days, seem pretty safe.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing here, of course, is what are you trading for the trigger? Like, how much does it cost to get a spell with a learn trigger on it? And what are you trading for the utility of having this lesson card in your sideboard as far as mana cost goes? And so the closer those things get to normal rate for a creature or a spell or whatever, the more powerful these cards are going to be. And so I think that's the thing you really need to challenge yourself when you're reviewing these cards is what premium am I playing for the flexibility, if any?
Exactly. Yeah, because I mean, you can just look at even Pop Quiz. 2 and a blue for an instant, draw a card, and also essentially draw a second card that you have somewhere else in your sideboard, right? Mm-hmm. And so that could be pretty cool if there is a lesson that is worth running in a deck that would also play Pop Quiz. And so that kind of remains to be seen.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the fact that there's a fallback case here makes these cards a lot better than they were initially. I mean, like you said, essentially Pop Quiz becomes an instant speed divination, which is, it's not really constructed playable, but if you have something that you really need, that's good. If you have a deck where you're just going to want to keep up mana to be able to draw 2 cards, that's good too. The one thing I will say is that I would not expect any of these lesson cards to be super specific in what they do. I think that they'll all be pretty general value cards, because that's another dimension of this whole thing, is that if there's some kind of weird combo that works with one of the lesson cards, like a really specific use one, then having learn with that to be able to get one of your combo pieces makes that whole thing a lot more powerful. So I would expect that most of these are going to be like bounce a creature, reanimate a creature, make tokens. Like, I think they're going to be pretty basic effects, but we'll have to see. That's another thing to look out for on the spoilers.
Dave, tell me about Magecraft.
Well, last thing I was going to say about learn.
Fine. Last
thing is that it almost doesn't matter how good the lessons are unless there's a really good learn spell. And I think that things that cost 3 is kind of a lot, because you're probably going to want to, in a lot of situations, be able to get the lesson and play it on the same turn, which I think that a lot of the mana values are making it hard to do that. So there's a little bit of the companion thing going on here, where you pay a down payment to get a card from your sideboard to be able to play it the next turn. So the cheaper the enabler gets, the cheaper the learn card gets. That's another powerful thing to watch out for too. That'll unlock a whole lot of things. If there happens to be like a 1 mana spell that has learn on it for who knows what reason, I would really, really be keeping an eye out for that.
Dave, will you tell me about Magecraft now?
Yeah, sure. Why did they do this? Why did they do this to me? Why did they do this to me, Shane?
Because they want you to have hope.
Magecraft, they took one of my favorite abilities and just said, we're going to make a whole set around it. And that ability is prowess. Prowess was simple. Your creature gets bigger. But Magecraft is a whole other thing, because what Magecraft says is it's a triggered ability that says whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, do X. And there's a whole bunch of different things that happen here. You know, it could be a fairly weak effect, as Shane says, like giving Eager First Year +1/+0, or making something like Prismari Apprentice unblockable. Those are kind of normal things you would see with prowess still, but here...
If you cast 2 instants, you make it double unblockable.
Yeah, exactly. That was always helpful with Jeskai Rune Fist, or whatever that card was called in Limited. So it really is them building off of the prowess mechanic with 2 big distinctions. Like, one is it's instants or sorceries only. There's a whole bunch of cards right now that only trigger off of instants and sorceries and aren't non-creature spell anymore, which is what prowess was. The other thing is they added in when you copy on here, which is another kind of surprising thing to see, because it can, depending on how you're copying these effects, it can make the effects stack up pretty quickly. And of course, there's a whole thing going on in Legacy with a card called, what's the name of that card that everybody's into with Magecraft? It's called like Cloud of Annoyance or something. It's a weird card that lets you copy itself over and over again.
Cloud of Spec.
Yeah, something. Cloud of Rampant Speculation. Yeah. Cloud of #MTG Finance. But it's worth keeping in mind, especially if you end up in a situation where you're copying spells for some reason.
Yeah, good point.
But Shane, what do you think about the power of a thing like this?
I have a suspicion that Magecraft is going to be one of the best mechanics in a long time. And by best, I mean in terms of the flexibility at what they can make Magecraft do, so that it could give different kinds of payoffs to different kinds of decks. Whereas prowess is frequently seen in aggressive spell and creature-based decks, Magecraft could do very different things, but have a similar sort of engine, but have different payoffs. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree that there's a ton of potential here, depending on how much they want to let people do. I mean, it's super on theme for the set, of course. You know, what do wizards in training do? They cast spells, and so we gotta have a casting spells matters theme. There's already tons of cards that exist that are good, whether they say prowess on them or not, from history, that have this effect. And so making a whole set around it, I think, means there's a lot of potential for constructed playable cards in all formats here. For example, there's already a 2 mana value generic and a green 2/2 that has the Sprite Dragon version of prowess. Basically, it's called Dragonsguard Elite. It doesn't have evasion, but it's a 2/2 that gets a +1/+1 counter on it every time you cast or copy an instant or sorcery. That's the kind of card that you could potentially put right into a prowessy shell if you wanted to, for some reason. I mean, there are likely better cards in some formats, but worth keeping in mind. And I feel like if we're gonna get a 1-drop that scales up with spells being cast again anytime soon, it's going to be in this set. Now, are they going to have it? I don't know, but we'll see. This is the place where you might get your 3rd set of Soulscar Mage Swiftspear kind of things, if it's ever going to happen.
Yeah, good point. All right, next mechanic is Ward. Ward just reads Ward X. Whenever this creature becomes a target of a spell or ability, an opponent controls, counter it unless that player pays X. So an example is Waterfall Aerialist. It's 3 and a blue for a Djinn Wizard, flying 3/1 with Ward 2. So this is kind of like a flexible hexproof, which I think is like really cool. Like, hexproof is a very annoying mechanic. Making something like this, making a mechanic like this so that a creature, or perhaps any permanent, is something that can be sort of mostly hexproof early, but not hexproof later, is a cool way to provide protection that sort of runs out as the game goes on. And I think that is, I think that's neat. I haven't seen anything with Ward that I think is particularly dangerous yet, but there's a lot of cards left.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that's unfortunate about this mechanic is the Frost Titan effect, which is essentially what this is, or the Unsettled Mariner effect, leads to lots of misplays. Because you can still cast the card and have it be countered. So it's extremely punishing if you miss that you don't have the mana to do it, or if you have weird timing things happen that prevent you from paying the mana in the right way. So I do think there's some feel bads around the way that this actually works. But I'm glad that they gave this a name. It seems like a type of thing that they could use in an evergreen way. So I'm glad that they gave it a succinct way to put that text on a card.
It's one of those things that I have to be careful with. I'm sure they're aware of that. I'm sure we're going to see some pretty safe ward cards. I wouldn't be surprised if we see one or two that people are like, it's a little too effective there. We'll have to see.
Yeah, here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a 1 red for a 1/2 with haste that has ward 2 and magecraft. What do you think?
Perfect.
Great.
I love it. And of course, we have MDFCs, the modal double face cards returning. We have creatures with spells in the back, double-sided creatures with different colors, double-sided planeswalkers, all sorts of stuff happening. This is the new normal. It's almost not worth mentioning, but this is the kind of stuff that we're seeing in Strixhaven as well.
Yeah. Last little thing I would mention here is that it's a set full of mages. That's the whole theme. There's going to be a lot of wizards in this set, so I'm really on the lookout for something that makes Wizards Lightning better in both Historic and Pioneer.
Right.
Again, 1-drops. So.
Yeah, Wizards Lightning is always one of those borderline cards, so let's make it happen.
Yep. Okay, so we got through the mechanics. We got a couple of really powerful mechanics here.
Yeah.
We got a good number of cards to go through.
I mean, as of I had like 6 today. Today's Monday. We're recording on Monday this week, not Sunday. And yeah, I think there's a bunch of cool stuff added. We're gonna have to breeze through this stuff. Like, let's start.
We don't have to breeze through anything. It's just you and me. We got an hour and a half left.
Feeling good.
Feeling good. Right. We have time for you to sing. Just the two of us at least 2 more times.
Let's start with some. Want to start with some bad cards, Dave?
I love bad cards.
The Snarl Lands. We finally got the
lands. Do we have to talk about
for.
these?
Yeah, we do.
These are trash.
I need to complain.
Okay.
We finally got our enemy paired reveal lands, Dave. But as we've come to realize,
so long for these. I've been waiting.
Reveal lands are bad.
Yeah, they're terrible.
Where are the pain lands, Watsy? Where are our allied pain lands, Watsy? We need them for Pioneer. We don't even have we're still two land types unequal in Pioneer, and they keep giving us this kind of stuff. They're not good. They'll probably see marginal play in Standard. I don't think they're going to do anything in our formats.
Yeah, I mean, if people have never played with these before, they look so much better than they are. You think to yourself, I've got I've got Shocklands, I've got some basics, I've got maybe cycling lands and triomes. What happens is when you have all those other lands, you don't have space to run these, and then when you do have to run these, you don't have the other cards to be able to actually reveal them, and they're just the worst top decks ever. Yeah. So
they're like the worst third land draw.
Yeah,
it's just like ugh.
Yeah, and another huge problem is that they play really badly with fast lands. So if you have something like a Spire Bluff Canal, for example, in a multicolor mana base where you want to like play it out and have it be untapped early, you can't keep a hand that has a Snarl Land and a fast land in it because the Snarl Land is going to be terrible. So it's like it really kind of works against so many different things by the typing. It's funny to me how much worse these are than like Glacial Fortress, like the check lands. Like these are the worst check lands ever.
They're not good. Let's not talk about them anymore.
Yeah.
What do you think about? I mentioned the double-sided Planeswalker MDFC. We have Rowan and Mill.
And
Rowan and Rowan and Mill. Will and Rowan. Yep. Double-sided Planeswalker.
What are they doing here?
Red on one side, blue on the other.
All the way from Eldraine, in less powerful versions of themselves. We have Rowan and Will Kenrith. Yeah,
that sounds right. That sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. I'll read these. I'll read this.
Oh, man. Okay.
So it's a double-sided Planeswalker, so it's got an incredible amount of text on it, of course. The Rowan side is 2 generic and a red for a 2 loyalty planeswalker that says instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 generic less to cast. Rowan has a +1 that deals 1 damage to each opponent. If you've drawn 3 or more cards this turn, she deals 3 damage to each opponent. She has a -4 that says you get an emblem with whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may pay 2. If you do copy that spell, you may choose new targets for the copy. The will side is 4 generic and a blue for 4 loyalty planeswalker. Has the same cost reduction mechanic as Rowan. It has a +1 that turns a creature into an 0/2. It has a -3 that draws 2 cards, and then has a -7 that says exile up to 5 target permanents. For each permanent exiled this way, its controller creates a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token.
Okay. So, man, I don't know about these. It's like I don't think they're not doing enough. This is like one of those things where it's like, oh, it's flexible. Mm-hmm. I guess it's really only flexible if you're running blue and red.
That's flexibility, my friends. You're running both of the best colors.
That's a good point. I think these are really marginal. They both are more. They both are either more expensive or their powers are less than you really want out of them. But yeah, I mean, it's an option. The cost reduction mechanic, the static is not terrible. Like Rowan doing that as a 3-drop, it's not that bad. And also, and the +1's like potentially cool. Like if you're playing a deck that feeds into this mechanic of drawing 3 or more cards in a turn, which is not that easy.
Yeah, I mean, you're playing Opt. You might be doing other cantrippy type things. There might be a spell that's coming into Historic that lets you just draw 3 cards.
Yeah, why not?
For cheap. That could be good. It's called Harmonize. And for my Rowan Harmonize deck. Yeah.
Teamer, Harmonize.
Oh, nobody's ever playing the will side. Come on.
That's a good point.
It's just gruel. You know, I don't know. I thought that this card is kind of interesting just because of the static, like you said. And it's Planeswalkers can be weirdly resilient, but in a deck where you're casting a lot of spells, you're probably just happier with Brawl or Goblin Electromancer if you want to do that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I thought this was a cool card, but I have my doubts to it finding a lot of homes.
Right on. Storm-Kiln Artist. Okay, this is one of the first cards I think is actually really cool and potentially has some play. Storm-Kiln Artist, 3 and a red for a dwarf shaman for all you shaman tribal decks out there. It gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control. Mm-hmm. But it has Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, create a treasure token. Treasure token. That's the Magecraft ability.
Yeah.
Or trigger.
Yeah. It's a cool one. I mean, it doesn't really synergize with what gives it a +1/+0.
That's what I think is so weird.
Kind of weird. For
so
sure.
Weird. It's like, that seems unnecessary in some way. Like the first line of text is like, are people going to play this in like their artifact deck? Not really. I think they want to cast instant sorceries.
I've just got my awesome artifact deck that also has a bunch of ops. But I mean, it is nice that you get mana back out of this. You get mana back at whatever color you want instead of something like Birgi, where you only get red mana back, which is like, I mean, that's a powerful card that I think is powerful in its own way too. But this one, you can get whatever color you need to keep cantripping.
Yeah. I mean, it's 4 mana value, right? I mean, it seems like this should be some kind of like Storm-Kiln O's engine card, right? But like, you know, it's only instants and sorceries.
Right.
So like this artifact thing just doesn't work. And like, you know, you look at, like you mentioned Birgi, and she's 3 mana. This is 4 mana. And one of the major weaknesses of cards like this is they kind of come down pretty late and then require a particular set of support cards around them to sort of go off. And I'm not sure that set of cards exists in Historic or Pioneer even. I don't think this is efficient enough for Modern by any means. Like maybe there's some sort of Historic, is it Storm control deck enabler? We'll talk about other cards that are going to maybe make that a thing. I mean, like the 4 mana is going to matter a little bit less because the early game is maybe about controlling what's happening. And then like you sort of stick this and then kind of go off type thing. But I don't know. I think this is a cool Magecraft, and I think people are going to try to do something with it for sure.
Mm-hmm. But
and, I mean,
I guess the one thing to keep in mind is that Storm-Kiln Artist gets bigger off of treasure tokens.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just going to say. Like, I kind of realized, like, yeah, let's say you make 5 treasure tokens, you're doing some removal or some bounce even. Like, doesn't have to, there's some efficient blue bounce out there. And then all of a sudden you have a 7 power Storm-Kiln Artist. Not shabby.
And your opponent shocks it.
Yeah, or stomps it.
Yeah, I don't know. This card, I don't know. I think like you said, it's too expensive for modern. The weirdest thing about all these cost reducers is that the best ones are all available in all the formats. So, if you look at this through the lens of being a sort of cost reducer for instance and sorceries, we have Brawl, we have Goblin Electromancer, we have Birgi, we have Rowan, and we have this. So, then those are available in Modern, Historic, and Pioneer. I don't see how this card rates.
Yeah, we'll see. Rip Apart, Dave. Mm-hmm. Red and a white sorcery. You get to choose one. You get to deal 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker, or destroy target artifact or enchantment.
This is the most modes. So this is Riptych command, is what we're calling this, right? Like, choose one, deal 3 damage to target creature, deal 3 damage to target planeswalker, destroy target artifact, or destroy target enchantment. Or I guess it's more like Riptych Charm. You don't get to choose 2.
Yeah, it's a Riptych Charm.
Yeah. Are they going to have charms? Like, I wonder if the other colors are going to have spells like this as well. Because this is, as far as like charm spells go, like modal spells go for cheap for 2 CMC, this is pretty good. It's got a lot of options.
Even though it's a sorcery, I mean, people play Wear Tear often, right? And this is not the same hyper efficiency with the which one's the 1 mana Wear? Like destroy the enchantment
side is
yeah.
The other one is just Shatter.
Yeah, just a Shatter. I mean, so this is cool. Like, this is hyper flexible. It's a sorcery, so yeah, it's not quite as good. People seem a bit torn on this one. Rip Apart, get it. So Spike
I thought that was a cool Natalie Imbruglia pun you just made. Thanks.
Our buddy Spike said over on Twitter that it's a modern staple, but then I've seen people in the replies say, on average, this is worse than a Braid. I think this spell is quite good. It's quite flexible. I wish it was a lesson, but then it would be busted. So I think this is probably a lock for a good amount of play in all of our formats, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've played a lot of Wear Tears in my day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right?
You almost never play a deck where you can use that as a 2-for-1, where you can use it as Wear Tear command, like Kolaghan's command. I think that this has a huge upgrade on a Braid just because you can use it to do 3 damage to a planeswalker, which is something I frequently find that I'm just kind of like, when I'm playing a deck that has a Braid in the sideboard, I find that I'm often like, I wish I had some kind of answer to a planeswalker as well. And then just also stapling Disenchant onto it seems like, I don't know. Even though this is a sorcery, I don't know how you could avoid playing a card that has this many options on it. You were talking a minute ago about the utility of a card like Will and Rowan, where it's kind of like, wow, this has got a bunch of things on one card, a bunch of ideas on one card, but what can we do with it? I think we all know exactly what we can do with 2 sideboard slots that are Rip Aparts.
Yeah, I think it's a quality card. I'm sure I will cast it pretty soon. It's great. Yeah, why not?
Let me, just by way of comparison for the instant sorcery thing, by the way, how often are you really bummed out that Collective Brutality is a sorcery?
Yeah, I mean that's fine as a sorcery. You know what I mean? A Braid is a spell that I do often. Let's in Gruul, for example, like a Braid's one of my primary sideboard slots.
Sure.
And I do bring it in a lot against creature decks, and that being an instant is something I want often. So yeah, I do agree that switching this to a sorcery is worse in this particular example, but then again, I probably won't be running Rip Apart in Gruul aggro. Like, this is just, it's a different kind of card for a different kind of deck. And I think, especially, let's say a red-white like based control strategy, whether that's like Jeskai or 4-color or something like that, is going to love the flexibility of a card like this, because that's just one more sideboard slot that maybe opens up, or that they don't have to consider because they're like, well, I've got Rip Apart,
right,
and I have a lot of my bases covered here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big question here is, does this go in like Feather, or does this go in Burn in Modern, even though it's a sorcery? Because Burn often has a sideboard that has some number of Abrades and some number of Wear Terror, you know, and so maybe. I mean, I think it's good enough too, so.
For sure. Okay. We are going to talk about a series, more in the series of red-white based cards, because we were getting, what was it? It's Strixhaven is the school, and whatever this, the Boros based guild, school, class.
I don't know. I don't know, man. Yeah, hang out.
Okay. So
Study
anyway,
group.
The study group, the Boros study group, they spoiled a bunch of those cards. So be prepared. Mm-hmm. The first one I want to talk about is Elite Spellbinder. Okay? Elite Spellbinder. You may recognize the person in this art as Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa, PV DDR. His World Championship card, probably the best player ever, immortalized on a very cool card. Okay? Mm-hmm. 2 and a white. Creature, human cleric, flying. 3/1. When Elite Spellbinder ETBs look at target opponent's hand, it's probably the one across from you. You may exile a non-land card from it. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it, but a spell cast this way costs 2 more to cast. Yeah, it's a human. It's a cleric, I guess, if you're a cleric fan. It's a good card. There's some cool stuff about this. So it's like, yeah, okay, there's like a tax thing, but like what happens if they remove it? Maria in our Slack pointed out that the opponent doesn't get the card back to hand if Elite Spellbinder dies. It's always taxed, even in exile, so that's mildly appealing. I think it definitely puts a better clock in the air than Kitesail Freebooter does, of course, for 1 mana more. It's an interesting option, I think, for like Death and Taxes, for humans, for Blink style decks. I think it's cool. I'm not sure it's like immediately slotting in to what is a very crowded 3-drop slot in Modern Humans, but there's definitely options there for sure. And it has a single white pip requirement. So this isn't something that's like, okay, Skyclave Apparition is 1 white. You have to be more heavily into white. This is something that a mild white splash could support, or something like that, if you like really wanted access to a card like this. So I think it has a variety of applications in probably Historic, Pioneer, and even Modern. I think it's a cool card.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of nailed it. I mean, these cards have a pretty good pedigree. Almost all the invitational cards seem some kind of play. The World Championship cards, invitational cards, whatever. I mean, some of them are longtime staples, like, Dark Confidant, or the, Meddling Mage is one. The last one I was trying to think, Solemn Simulacrum is one as well. Like, those are all invitational cards. I think that this has as much utility as those cards as well. I think the biggest thing about this card is that it attacks well.
For sure.
And that's the thing that really makes the difference between it being good and not. And I think that it's interesting, when I think about I've never played humans really, but when I think about Kitesail Freebooter, that deck can take off the second turn to be able to do disruption, and that card gets pumped off of, Exalted triggers and Thalia's Lieutenant and things like that. So I think that body growing over time makes that a little bit better of a card for Modern. But in like Historic and Pioneer, places where you don't play these kind of like human-y decks with the same kind of curve or the same kind of intention, specifically you don't really use Thalia's Lieutenant that much, though maybe you will in Pioneer once this card is around. I think that this card attacking like a Flicker Wisp is really, really good for Historic and Pioneer specifically. And the disruption effect is cool. You want to be aggressive so that your opponent never gets a chance to cast that card again. So I think that this plays really well into that game plan. I'm hopeful about this card being good.
Yeah, I'm hyped for it.
And it's a cool design. What an interesting new mechanic for white to have. Let's not give white access to straight up discard, but let's tax people temporarily on a specific resource. It all fits in pretty well.
Yeah, I Pioneer does have that Orzhov Humans deck, and this is just another piece that could be considered for that. I think it's good. Good work, PV, for getting this cool card. Venerable Warsinger, 1 red and a white for a Spirit Cleric. I somehow missed copying their power and toughness into the document.
It's 3/3.
3/3. Okay. Vigilance and Trample. Whenever Venerable Warsinger deals combat damage to a player, you may return target creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of damage Venerable Warsinger dealt to that player. Dave, is this good enough? Like, not for Modern, maybe Historic, maybe Pioneer?
I gotta say, I have no idea. I mean, I think that the thing that's nice about this is that, there are cards that do things like this that bring back like a spell or something like that. And I think there's a card like that that's in this set, even that brings back a spell. That. And I think that this effect of bringing back a creature is actually a lot easier to achieve and a lot better in a lot of ways, because it's useful maybe at more times.
Yeah, permanents are frequently much better than spells.
I mean, in this kind of recycling sense too. I think it's awesome that it has trample, of course. That's why the card even works at all. So at least you're hoping that you're going to get a 1/1 back on things, and there are lots of valuable 1/1s to be able to try to bring back. I think it's right on the edge of being good enough. The problem with Modern, of course, is that it dies immediately to Bolt and can't always attack through everything, and Modern is just about different things than this card is about. But maybe if there's some kind of like long-term grind value deck that Warsinger fits into, that could be good. Kind of a Bernie deck. I mean, bringing back a 3/3 with this, like some kind of three mana value card, is wild. Right. Yeah, so I mean, if you get up to there, that's huge. So,
I mean, you've got like Seasoned Hallowblade exists to like pitch cards out of your hand while keeping Hallowblade like alive. There's of course other ways to get cards into the yard, whether it's like through creature attrition or some other kind of discardy spells that we're going to be talking about for Historic and even in Pioneer, of course. But the floor is pretty basic, right? It's a 3/3 Vigilance Trampler for 1 red and a white. I think that there's potential here. I think that there could be a lot going on with a strategy that incorporates this card. Yep. So, I mean, like, you pump this thing with any number of, red, white, feather style stuff. There's a lot of ways to get a lot of stuff back out of the graveyard for sure.
Yeah. I mean, in a weird way, you can imagine this card with, what's the one from Aether Revolt that brings back a 2 mana card?
I don't know, Dave.
You just do a whole thing. Renegade Rallier, I think it's called.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
you could do a whole bunch of Revolt plus this kind of bring back your creature stuff.
And that's kind of, this gets at what the Lorehold gang is all about, which is getting stuff out of the graveyard, which is somewhat novel for the Boros type identity, where it's like we're aggressive, but the payoff for our aggression is a lot of recursion. And we'll see some more ways in which that is happening with Radiant Scrollwielder. This card is weird. 2 red and a white for a dwarf cleric. This is a 2/4. Instant and sorcery spells you control have lifelink. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile an instant or sorcery card at random from your graveyard. You may cast it this turn. If a spell cast this way, we put into a graveyard, exile it instead.
Yeah. This is a pretty expensive Soulfire Grandmaster, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, but Soulfire Grandmaster did not recur your spells in this fashion.
No, it just lets you put them back in your hand.
Which is also cool.
Which is interesting too, yeah.
But this costs 4. No, it's not going to be in Modern. But there might be something here, but probably not. Random is bad. Random is always bad. Random is always worse than you think it's going to be. But you can control it a little bit in a deck that might be just be a bunch of burn, or maybe, Dave, feather. Like, you have just a lot of redundant spells that are doing similar things, and you're going to get payoffs. Like, I think this is a feather support card.
It's interesting because that deck runs Dreadhorde Arcanist.
Yes.
Often. And I think in most situations, Dreadhorde Arcanist is just better than this card because you get to pick and because you get to do weird, feathery, recursion, cheaty things with it. One thing that's fascinating is that, this instant and sorcery spells you control have lifelink basically says, play me with bolts.
Yeah.
And, Feather doesn't really run that many of those, although being able to have Reckless Rage have lifelink on it would be pretty good.
Would that would do 6, right?
Yeah, you would gain 6 life off of it.
Ooh.
But
I think it's got a chance.
But 4 mana. I don't know. I'm kind of out on this card.
That's fair. That's totally fair. I wanted to point this out as an example of a card that has potential because of the way that they are working with Lorehold here.
Right. Well, I do like that they've spent a bunch of time trying to make Boros or Lorehold have a separate identity from basically every other time that there's been a red-white guild or team or anything. Every red-white deck in Limited is always, I'm going to attack and use combat tricks. And so it's good that they're trying something that's a little bit different here as well.
For sure. Dave, there's another card I want you to talk about that's similar to the card we just talked about.
Yes, it's called Efreet Flamepainter. It's 3 generic and a red. It is an Efreet Shaman with double strike. And this is from the Is It one, I believe, if it was going to be marked.
4.
Yeah, and it's a 1/4. And it says, whenever Efreet Flamepainter deals combat damage to a player, you may cast target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put in your graveyard, exile it instead. So when you attack, you do.
You got double strike.
You do double strike. And
you do the double strikey.
You kind of do like a Snapcaster Mage move, sort of, with it.
This is potentially dangerous. I'm only saying that because it's a single red pip, right? So let's say this is in some kind of historic or maybe some kind of pioneer. I see it as a 3 or 4 color ramp deck. Maybe it has some self-mill, right? And you're putting some ultimatums or something absurd in your graveyard and using removal so that this creature can get through, and then you just get some bonkers card out of your graveyard. Again, this is best case scenario mentality, but I don't think that that's out of the question. I think I think it's a high ceiling, low floor card, but I wouldn't be surprised to see people doing some combo type shenanigans with this card more than something fair. I think it's probably better use doing something broken than just trying to be a value engine, but it could be that too.
Yeah. I think that's probably the biggest move with it, is to try to get something absurd into your graveyard and cast it. There's another card from Theros block called Prophetic Flamespeaker that is a 1/3 double strike trample that says whenever Prophetic Flamespeaker deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. And so you could, with this card, have exiled a couple of things off the top, cast them for free. It's not restricted to instant or sorcery. It's not restricted to things that are already in your graveyard. So you're guaranteed to get something every time. This card saw no play anywhere ever. And so it does worry me a little bit about how good this card really is. It reminds me a little bit of also that red card that lets you put sneak attack a Planeswalker in a way where it's kind of it looks like something you could play for value, but it's really something that you want to do in a combo kind of move. Yeah. So I feel like you're right that it's okay, maybe I'm using a single red card that lets me discard 2 cards to be able to put something like Omniscience.
No, those things aren't value. Those are not legal.
Well, but at any rate, trying to figure out some way to put Omniscience into my graveyard and then cast it for free, possibly. But I don't know. This card is on the bubble for me too, mostly just because of mana cost. I think it's too pricey.
It's too pricey, but then you got a ramp deck, right? There's that's why I mentioned the ramp, because I think having this a little bit early is pretty cool. You untap, you cast a removal spell, you get this thing through, and then there's some options here. It might not do anything. It might do some really annoying stuff. I think people are going to experiment with it, because casting a spell from your graveyard without paying its mana cost is potentially really good.
Yeah, it can be really good and really broken. Okay, what else do we have next?
I highlighted a lesson, Dave, from the day. Dave, let's Dave. I know you're busy. You have a busy job, busy life. So I picked out today's card. So you go with me here. One white. Reduced to memory. One white. Sorcery lesson. Exile target non-land permanent. Oh, that sounds cool. But its controller creates a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. This is a pretty good lesson, though, right? Like, I think it's definitely playable. It's not overpowered. It's safe. Very safe. Spells like this don't see a ton of play, like, the generous gift, beast within style stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you and I had a discussion about generous gift back when Modern Horizons came out, where we're kind of,
I'm not high on it, right?
This comes around. These happen sometimes, and then you were like, no, they're not very good, and then it hasn't seen a ton of play. Comes up occasionally. Beast Within comes up occasionally. I think having it be searchable for a moment that you really want it is nice. Now, you do have this whole thing where this card versus Skyclave Apparition becomes kind of a weird thing, right? So in a deck, you're going to start any deck that probably wants this card with 4 Skyclave Apparitions first.
Sure.
And then maybe you have one of these in the sideboard. Maybe you have 2 of these in the sideboard just in case. But I do think this is one of the first ones that I've seen with a lesson mechanic that seems like it fits into what I would want, which is give me a card. Maybe I play it on a 2-drop that has Learn, which is just like a Ophi creature, and it draws me a removal spell, and that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a potential for this to be very playable. Not in Modern, of course, because, and again, like you said, we have to have a Learn card that's worth playing in the first place. So these are tandems, right? Like, this is a 1 white. This is not something you're going to splash for in, like, a 3-color deck that's running white. I mean, maybe because you can get this in when it's like a 5-drop or a 6-drop you're tagging, right? But I think there's flexibility here. I think that it's the tutor nature makes this really powerful if it can be combined with a card that you want to run that's also a Learn card.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is the type of card that makes more borderline Learn cards more playable, right? Like, you don't necessarily want Rampant Growth, which is what one of the colorless Learn cards does, but a removal spell, okay. I'm paying attention
even with
now.
the drawback.
Right. All right. Archmage Emeritus, a Magecraft card for us to talk about again. 2 blue for a human wizard. It is a 2/2, so it's a 4-mana 2/2.
My favorite.
Yeah, you love cards like this. The only text on this says, Magecraft, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, draw a card.
Yeah, I mean, drawing cards is good. I don't know about stapling onto a 2/2. Like, when I first saw this, I thought it was a 3-drop. Okay, and I was like, well, I guess I could play this on turn 4 and then have like an instant or sorcery to like at least get the card back type thing, because this thing is going to get stomped for major value.
It made immediately. Yeah.
Yeah. So like for like, let's say Young Pyromancer, right? Like, you play Young Pyromancer a lot of times on turn 3, depending on the matchup, of course, because you want to be able to at least get a token out of it if your opponent interacts with it. So like, what are you doing? You're going to play this on turn 5 to like try to get a card back out of it and just hope to like untap with it and then really kind of go off. I don't know. The 2 blue makes me not love it. What do you think, Dave? This is a card that I think's way more in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the more I think about this card, like, it's definitely fragile. So I don't know if it makes it into any of the Eternal formats because of the mana value to power ratio. But if you think about this versus Storm-Kiln guy that we just spent a bunch of time talking about, I think that clearly, as good as making a treasure every time that you know, that's a super powerful effect for Magecraft. I think draw a card is maybe ultimately more powerful or more useful with a mechanic, at least. And I think it lets you be able to put this card into a deck that's more control-y, where you're kind of like, hey, I'm going to put it up with some protection. Every time I play one of my protection spells on it, I draw a card. Yeah. You know, maybe you play it in a rampy type deck, and it's like every time I growth spiral into it, and then every time I play growth spiral, once it's up, I draw 2 cards and get to play a land to have extra interaction up. So I think it has potential to become a real engine in longer game plan decks. The problem with those decks is that they don't play a lot of creatures, right? And so putting a creature main deck that's not Uro, that recurs itself, means that you make your opponent's removal live. And so suddenly you have this threat that you didn't really have any ways for your opponent to get value out of their removal before. Now you have some. But
could be a great sideboard card.
Yeah.
I mean, could be the ones like I'm always shaving like my Bone Crusher Giants against control strategies, because it's like, well, I have other 3-drops that maybe have haste or something like that are better against, a sweeper or removal pile strategy. So you kind of bring this in against a deck that let's go to Gruul aggro, right? Minimal removal in the first place. You don't play a lot of removal main deck. You're going to shave the kind of removal interaction that you might have at all, probably against a deck like this. Bring in that Archmage, and your opponent has no way really to deal with it, and you take over. You untap with it. It's kind of like what's the Innkeeper, right? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, Edgewall Innkeeper.
Yeah, we know the power of cards that can just draw more cards, and instant or sorceries are going to be more ubiquitous in a deck like this than even adventure creatures are in Gruul or Naya Adventures.
Yep, totally agree. So I think this card is like a maybe.
Yeah. I think it's cool. I think it has potential. I like you talking about it as more of a controlling, like, pivot card where it's like, hey, I can get some value out of this and sort of get a lot of card advantage while being stapled to a creature. So why not?
Why not? All right, Shane, this next one is one that you added to the list.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only because I think it's cool. A Witherbloom Apprentice, black and green, human druid 2/2. It's a bear. Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So I want this card to be cool, but it's not really in the colors you want.
Yeah, I think that's the weirdest thing about this, is that when you see Magecraft expand out away from, blue and red into black green, you're suddenly like, what are we paying people for casting instants and sorceries? And what instants and sorceries are they going to cast? Like, what's going on here? It's
just like the bizarre member of like the Blood Artist, Falconwrath Aristocrat, Zulaport Cutthroat meetup group.
Yeah.
And like, he's like, I'm really into illusions.
Yeah, no, they're like, he's like, yeah, killing creatures is great, but you ever cast Op? Like, that's what he's asking. And they're like, Opt? Like, get out of here with your Ops.
No, we're sacrificing things.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like you said, it's not really in like the guild / colors that are really sort of cantripping and casting a lot of spells. It's probably not going to do what I want it to do, but I think it's interesting that they are branching out into this realm in Golgari colors.
Yep, agreed. All right, Dragonsguard Elite, we talked about a little bit. We didn't give our reactions to it. I just think this is a card that I would like to be good, and if you ever wanted to be in a red-green prowess deck for some reason, which we've seen occasionally, especially in Historic, like, that could be cool. But no evasion is a big strike against cards like this.
Yeah. I mean, I'm comparing this in my mind to like Flourishing Fox.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of not impressed with Dragonsguard Elite. Like, it's like,
I think you should compare it to Sprite Dragon more than Flourishing Fox even, although Flourishing Fox is pretty good too. But to me, this is reminiscent of like, well, a 1/1 body with haste and flying is just better than a 2/2 body with neither of those things with the same ability.
I mean, I guess what I was getting at is that Flourishing Fox is a 1-drop, and it's kind of the same concept, which is like you need the deck to be built around Flourishing Fox, and Dragonsguard Elite is likely going to need a sort of deck that's built around it as well. So it's just kind of like, hey, Flourishing Fox is more efficient. It's already in a strategy, and it's already not like some kind of crazy card that people are like, oh man, Flourishing Fox, I hate Flourishing Fox. I mean, some people probably do. But yeah, Dragonsguard Elite, I think it's cool. I like the idea of, let's bring back red-green prowess. Why not? We've got some cool cards in this set. Like one that I didn't call out. Talk about it really quickly. It's like Potion of Empowerment type idea. It's a green instant. You gain 2 life. Target creature gets +X until end of turn, where X is the amount of life you gained this turn. So that would be an instant +3/+3 onto a card like this. So it's like, you're not going to run a bunch of Potion of Empowerments, probably, but why not?
Yeah.
You could make this thing. You can make this thing big quickly. You could crash through. There's a bunch of stuff you can do with it. So maybe there's like a aggressive Naya deck out there in the world of Feather.
I just think there's a chance that it's like red green, like Teamer prowess in Historic or something like that. Especially if we don't get a one mana Magecraft card that I'm so desperately looking for.
Dave, I picked this one out today because I wanted to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
And it's Curate.
Yep. I'll read
One of the blue instant. Look at the top 2 cards of your library. I believe that's called Scry 2, but it's not. Put any number of them into your graveyard and the rest back on top of your library in any order, and then you draw a card.
Isn't that actually Surveil 2? Should this card just say one blue instant, Surveil 2, draw a card?
No, you know how they like to not have Surveil be consistent.
Yeah.
But essentially it is Surveil.
It is Surveil, draw a card. Okay, so this is one blue and an instant, Surveil 2, draw a card.
No, not actually Surveil.
Right.
Your Spybug, your Dimir Spybug based decks will not succeed with this.
Oh no, not my Spybugs. I think that this card is a lot like that one that was Ponder for 2 mana. Remember from
is that the name of the card?
M20. Yeah, it's Ponder for 2 mana is the name of this card.
Remember me from M20?
Yeah, people thought I was so good. I kind of bought into that card a little bit, and then it was just like, no, the only reason these cards are good is because they cost 1 mana. I mean, this one has the distinction of going up against a card that is 2 mana in strategic planning because it's very close to strategic planning.
Which is a sorcery.
Right, which is also a sorcery. So that's the trade-off you're making, is that you get 1 less card, but you get an instant. I just don't know, man. Like this one, I feel like I'm just going to want strategic planning in almost every deck that I'm going to play this in, because the biggest part is I'm digging to put things into the graveyard. I'm not running this for value. And so I think seeing 3 cards is so much better than seeing 2 for 2 mana that I'm doubtful about this card being good enough, especially for our formats. For
sure. Yeah, I think that people are going to test this. They're going to test it against something like strategic planning, maybe even with something like strategic planning. And I think you're probably right. And that it's just not going to be doing enough for the mana value, let's say.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, especially where you're just like, I'm trying to get graveyard reanimation targets into my yard. If you're playing that dwarf guy, you want to get 3 cards into the graveyard to choose from to cast for free instead of only 2.
I got one more card before we head into a series of cards.
Okay.
And it's Shadrix Silverquill.
Yeah.
A 3 white black legendary elder dragon 2/5 flying double strike. At the beginning of combat on your turn, so note that's the turn you play it, you may choose 2. Each mode must target a different player. Target player creates a 2/1 white and black inkling creature token with flying. Target player draws a card and loses 1 life. Target player puts a 1/1 counter on each creature they control. I think this is like a potential historic control finisher. That's like about it. I think it has potential. This is not a great card. I think it's a cool card that could see some play.
Let me ask you a question. When is this card better than Dream Trawler?
Rarely, when you're not playing blue, when you're playing white-black.
White-black control finisher, Shadrix Silverquill. Come up to the plate. What do you think Shadrix Silverquill's walk-up music is?
Oh man, what do you think it is, Dave?
What's that AAA slash line look like on Shadrix Silverquill? I just did a fantasy baseball draft last night. Is it a power speed guy, no batting average, or just
I think
slick fielding?
I think he's like a 240, but like 402, 405. I think it's like an 800 OPS, but always gets on.
Good UZR.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shadrix. All right. Yeah, I don't think that card's good enough. I will be bummed. I saw someone mention the other day in our Slack, they were like, if it says creature type Elder Dragon, it's not really for constructed. And I was like, but what about Dragon Lord Silumgar and like the Silumgar, the Roaming Death or whatever. Like those were pretty good cards. Dragonlord Ojutai was a good card.
Yeah, I mean, Atarka, Ojutai, they saw some play, right?
Kolaghan.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of, Kolaghan did stuff. He had haste.
Yeah. The Fury one that was a 4/4 attacker those were constructed playable cards. So, but this one, not for us.
Yeah, if you think so.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay. All right, next, it's really funny. I feel like you're usually a pessimist, and tonight I'm like, no, these cards aren't good enough.
I mean, I was in a rare mood to have hope, Dave.
To have hope. Okay, let's talk about the commands, because we never got around to talking about the commands in this set, because there are actually commands in this set. They are very akin to the Khans of Tarkir, or Dragons of Tarkir command cycle, in the sense that they are mostly cheaper. They're enemy colors, so they're completing that cycle in some ways, which is something people have been wanting for a long time. They've been wanting to see the enemy cycle command options.
Oh yeah, we've talked about that as like when we used to do wind downs, and people would be like, "What kind of cards do you want to see?"
Yeah,
we'd be like, "Oh yeah, we want those commands."
Yeah, generally a cool thing. The last time these were printed, we got Bonafide Staple Kolaghan's command. One of the greatest 3CMC spells ever.
One of your favorites.
One of my favorites. Role players, Dramoka's command, Atarka's command, and even super occasionally Ojutai's command seems some play. I refuse to believe anyone has ever cast Silumgar's command to this day. So it's a heavily awaited cycle. But let's go through it really quick. So the Quandrix command, the Witherbloom command, and the Lorehold command, these are all unplayable, I think. I'm not even going to read that.
I had some hope for Witherbloom, but there's the parts don't add up to the whole, and it's sorcery speed. And there's some ostensible value there, but it's probably not enough. I can just imagine how little value this has on the draw.
Yeah.
Often.
I mean, I'll read it really quickly. So Witherbloom is 2 CMC, so it's one that you definitely want to look at really closely, because it's choose 2 modes for 2 CMC. But the modes are: target player mills 3 cards, then you return a land card from your graveyard to your hand. Okay. Destroy target non-creature, non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. Okay. Target creature gets -3/-1 until end of turn, and target opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. I mean, maybe I could reassess this a little bit, just because it is so cheap, and it has the ability to kill a creature, kill a problematic low-value permanent, and basically ignore the other 2 modes. Occasionally you might use it for ramp or fixing your draw, I guess, with the fetch land.
I think it just becomes pretty useless pretty fast. There's not enough hype. The power level of the card is not high enough to go into a deck, a black-green based deck of almost any stripe. So
yeah. I mean, it's tough when you're competing with decks that can run Abrupt Decay, which does both of those 2 middle modes. It can't get you a 2-for-1. And also Assassin's Trophy, which I think are just more reliable, but I will bump this up from unplayable to maybe. I still think that Quandrix and Silverquill Quandrix and Lorehold are still not good /enough. But that leaves 2. So Silverquill command is 2 colorless, a white and a black, for a sorcery that says choose 2. Target creature gets +3/+3 and gains flying until end of turn. Return target creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Target player draws a card and loses 1 life. Target opponent sacrifices a creature. That's Silverquill command for you.
Cool sorcery.
Yeah, why is this a sorcery?
Cool sorcery, my friend. It's I think it's probably too good as an instant, right?
Is it because the first mode is too good? If it's an instant, you can do some crazy block stuff or something? I don't know.
Here's what I think that,
or reanimating at instant speed is too good.
Yeah, let's say, I mean, it's not like it gives haste, I guess. So it's I don't know if the parts here add up to the whole for me as a 4-mana sorcery. It's maybe, let's say something like a grindy Orzhov based shadow deck, right? Then that's maybe kind of where we see it, or you get your Scourge back late game, and that's pretty cool. Those are 2 potentially great late game cards to have access to. The +3/+3 and gains flying is really good, giving something like a Skyclave Badman or a Death Shadow flying and evasion really nice, plus a pump. I don't know. I think that it's tempting to sort of say yeah, it could be great in a bad deck. or a not great deck.
I was just looking at it going, when you said that, I was like, well, it makes my Death Shadow fly, or it brings my Death Shadow back, or it lets me draw a card, or it makes my opponent sacrifice a creature.
That's all fine.
I start to like it a little more there.
Like it's like 3.5 mana. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's not quite 4 for me. I don't know either. This is a card where I feel like if you're ever gonna see it, it's gonna be a one of. Yeah, and it's just one of those things. Yeah, like because it's way too. It's terrible to draw 2 of these like ever. You know what I mean? And it's even bad in your opener. So it's like one of those things you want to see occasionally to like really win a game. But if you're really grasping for straws at that point, maybe in particular metas, maybe as a sideboard card, like against removal heavy type decks or something like that. I mean, I don't know. I think it's better as the game goes longer, I think.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So the last one is Prismari Command, which is 1 generic, 1 blue, 1 green, or 1 red. Sorry. 1 generic, 1 blue, 1 red. It's an instant. So this one is just basically like Kolaghan's Command, right? So it's choose 2 from this list. Prismari Command deals 2 damage to any target, destroy target artifact, target player draws 2 cards, then discards 2 cards, and target player creates a treasure token. So it's 2 modes of Kolaghan's Command plus Is It Charm plus make a treasure token.
Plus investigate.
Yeah.
Was that investigate was not in? No, that's not a clue. That's not clue. It's a treasure.
It's a treasure. Yeah.
That's what I was saying. I was saying clue was not in blue and red. Was it?
Yeah, it was. It had. There were clue mechanics.
Okay.
In everything, kind of.
Anyway, cool side conversation. Yeah, I mean, I think this is the most realistically playable in any of our formats. Like, I don't know if this is modern.
It's because it's Kolaghan's Command. Yeah. That's why that's why it's playable. They just made Kolaghan's Command again.
I mean, the looting is pretty cool. It's an expensive loot. You know what I mean? It's an expensive loot card.
Yeah.
It ramps. You know what I mean? Ramping is never bad. I mean, sometimes it's bad, but it's rarely something that you're like, it's a good fail safe. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, okay, well, they have a really good artifact that I want to hit, and I wouldn't mind casting this 5-drop next turn. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, why not give me a little treasure token?
Yep. I totally agree. I mean, I think that these modes are good. It probably will see play. Why doesn't this have a conditional counter mode?
I mean, it seems like it has to, right?
Yeah, the only one that has a conditional counter is the Quandrix one, and like that's fine. But I really wish that this one had like counter target instant on it or something like that. Would feel more appropriate to me than what's here.
Dave, I'm a little sad.
I'm very sad about these.
I don't love these commands. That's why I wasn't even like very amped up to talk about them when they were spoiled over a month ago.
Yeah.
We never talked about them for a reason.
Yep. These are a bummer. Okay. Last card for the dive down. We're going to call it a night after this card is Professor Onyx, which is 4 colorless black, legendary planeswalker Liliana. Didn't realize it was Liliana when I first saw it. I thought maybe it was a joke. Magecraft. It has a static Magecraft ability. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. +1, you lose 1 life. You look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 in your hand and the rest in your graveyard. -3, each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures that player controls. And -8, each opponent may discard a card. If they don't, they lose 3 life. Repeat this process 6 more times. Loyalty 5. Okay, this is the biggest Magecraft payoff we've seen so far. It casts Brainstorm for a +1. Or maybe even better than Brainstorm, honestly, because you get to get rid of the bad cards. Its minus is Crackling Doom.
Yeah.
And then the -8 is just insane. So this card's powerful. It's a 6-mana planeswalker with high loyalty. It's not cheap. It's too big for modern, I think. But I think this card has a home in a win con for some kind of like maybe Dimir control deck or something like that. It just seems super powerful. Plus, you just kill somebody while you're doing your plan with this card. You know, you don't even have to ultimate it or whatever to be able to do the drain game that it does. You can play this and then have some counter spell up. If you have to counter something, they take 2. If you cast Op, they take 2. If you thought seize them late game, they take 2. Like, those are ways that this card can be on plan for you still in a deck like that, I think.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but it's like the only thing the thing that I like about this is that it's black, so it could support archetypes that don't necessarily exist right now in, let's say, Pioneer and Historic, right? Like you said, like maybe this makes Dimir control better, and they don't have to be like this rampy Sultai Ultimatum style deck.
Yeah.
But like for one more mana, you cast Sultai Ultimatum and you're winning that game. Or not Sultai, I mean, Emergent Ultimatum, whatever it's called. The Ultimatum card that I don't like to see cast against me.
Right. Emergent. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like this costs 6 mana. People seem pretty higher on it than me. Like I think it's like $40 pre-order right now, and I'm like, I don't really know why. Like,
I think people think it's going to be big in the Emergent Ultimatum decks in Standard. Is part of why.
This could be. Yeah. I mean, Standard does move cards for sure. People are apparently playing Standard offline. So yeah, I mean, more power to them. This is not a card I'm not going to pre-order or craft. I'm fine being wrong on this one. I don't think I am at $40. Not a lot of Planeswalkers see $40 and higher, especially 6 mana ones.
Yep.
But I think that, like you said, I think that the Magecraft payoff is great. I think, like you said, you don't have to start minusing it. You don't have to go for the ultimate. Getting there is great. But just the static alone is pretty awesome. If you can untap with it, maybe you have some cantrips, maybe you just have a few removal spells, maybe you have some draw a card that gets you 2 more cards. I mean, you can start playing your late game, draw 2 cards, and you get more spells and blah blah blah. And just, you recover your life that you might be pretty low on and drain your opponent out. Why not?
Yep. Okay. Now it is time for us to hop over to a whole new topic. We're running out of time tonight, as usual. I had a whole bit written. I was going to do this whole thing. We were going to do this wind up about the art style and all this stuff, but we don't have time for that. I think this is a bigger discussion as far as what's going on with the Mystical Archive reprint set that's hidden within Strixhaven that we can talk about maybe next week when Stan is back and potentially we have some other special guests.
Yeah, it probably makes sense. Huge. Our take on the whole thing.
But tonight, just to give real-time reactions to all those cards being spoiled, Shane and I can give our reactions to what's going on with this set. So, in case you missed it, Mystical Archives, these are like the all-time great instants and sorceries that are being reprinted into this set. It's a set of 63. There's going to be 1 in each pack. Nothing too wild about this, except for the fact that these cards, most of them, 56 of them, will be legal in Historic. And that's where things got wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how many new cards are being added to Historic?
It's 34.
34. So we have 34. Fresh off of the release of Anthology 4, we're getting Anthology 4.5.
Exactly.
34 new cards. So 29 other cards are either pre-banned or they're reprints of cards that you already know and love on Magic the Gathering Arena.
Yep. And so, for fun, we saw that Saffron Olive had posted like a tier maker for this, that some people in our community, Joe Chaney among them, did like a ranking. Then we had some fun talking about it. So Shane and I did our rankings, and we thought we would just talk about them in tiers about what we think is going to be the most impactful. I think the biggest thing about this is, economic model aside, these things are going to cause a massive amount of change in Historic because the cards that they printed in it are so good. They really are all-time greats. Okay.
I will say, though, this exercise put me a little bit more at ease. This looking at all the cards, putting them into tiers, having kind of a thought process behind what I meant in my brain by each tier. And I was like, okay, I'm a little bit less scared, but I think there's still a lot of reason to be excited / apprehensive / freaked out. And let's get into some of those.
Yep. Okay. So for our S tier, what I would call our S tier, both Shane has maybe moved these in other places.
Ryu and Dan, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Zelda, Link.
Yep.
Kirby.
Love it. Is that what this was for originally? Smash Brothers? All right. Anyway.
Oh yeah, I think it's that's like the first time I saw S tier is when they were just like is beyond the A tier for like fighting game characters.
Yeah. Okay. So the number one card, I think Shane and I both agree on this. The card that we think is going to make the most impact on Historic from the Mystical Archives is Inquisition of Kozilek.
Okay, hold on. I do want to interrupt here. I don't necessarily think it will make the biggest impact. I think it has the biggest impact combined with the most obvious homes.
Yep. And I think that's fair.
Yeah. Inquisition of Kozilek.
So we know this card. Some of us love this card. Some of us hate this card. But the big upshot here is now Modern's Hand Disruption Suite, basically the best hand disruption suite available at 1CMC, is now available in Historic as well. And so what you're going to do is you're going to have people trying this out in Jund type shells. You're going to have people trying it out in Death Shadow type shells. All of a sudden, you can get up to 6 1-mana hand disruption spells, and that is really annoying, I think, for people in a format there we already thought Thoughtseize was potentially too good.
Yeah. I mean, you could have 8, Dave. I mean, 6 is typically the number.
But people definitely play 7 or 8 of these depending on the meta and the deck that they're playing. So it wouldn't be unheard of.
Yeah, I mean, this is just, is this potentially dangerous? Like, is this adding too much to decks that don't really need the bump? Like I said, this is an S tier for me. It's the only card in S because it's the only clear addition to me to many existing great strategies in Historic. It's not going to have any new decks built around it. It's just great. It's just efficient. And it does something that a format like Historic, you can get a lot of tempo advantage. And that's one of the reasons that Thoughtseize is so good, is because you can really stop an opponent's game plan because the spells aren't as efficient to come back from. And Inquisition of Kozilek is slightly less so, but you don't lose life, etc., etc. You can just get that rule of 8 going on where you have 8 of the same effect. I don't know. Like, I'm afraid of this really pushing both the hand disruption and the removal suite very heavily in black right now. It's going to make black-based decks even more powerful and even more ubiquitous, and they have a lot going for them already.
Totally agree. All right, let's move on to a card that neither one of us has cast in a very long time.
I've never cast a spell.
You never cast a spell. All right, the next spell that I had in my S tier is Brainstorm. Okay, Brainstorm, Legacy staple, vintage restricted card, if I remember correctly. Brainstorm. This one I don't think was too shocking, though. I mean, I think if you make a list of the best spells ever and put it out there, Brainstorm is a common. It's been reprinted a lot of times. To see it reprinted in a set where it's going to end up in Historic was surprising. But this format doesn't have a lot of great cantrips already. And so I actually think that while this card is going to get played a lot, I don't have a lot of fears about it being too good for the format, because there's no fetch lands, of course. However, I do think the people who are kind of like, this card isn't good in a format without fetch lands, I think that that's kind of overwrought as well. I think that this is a good card. It's better than Opt. It's maybe the best 1 blue cantrip that we're going to get in Historic, and I think it's a good one. Yeah. I mean, it's a powerful card. There's ways to shuffle your deck. I mean, there's Field of Ruin. There's, we have our sort of quote unquote fetch lands, of course. I don't know. I think that there's a lot of ways to get value out of a Brainstorm, and there's ways to put this into other decks, like perhaps new decks that are using other new cards that we're going to have access to, whether they're in Strixhaven, whether they're in these Mystical Archives. I think that there's potential for Brainstorm to be useful, mainly because it's cheap and it does stuff. And and it does stuff that decks that run blue frequently want to have access to. So like you said, it's better than Opt, and Opt is something that people run in decks like Phoenix decks and things like that, simply because it does something. And so why not do something better? Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that the thing that people underrate a little bit about Brainstorm too is like it lets you fix your curve in a way that is non-destructive too. You know what I mean? It's where it's kind of like, okay, maybe I don't want to get rid of these cards. It's certainly not as good as like Opt a bunch or scry a bunch and then draw 1 card and put the other ones wherever you want. That's just more options. But we're not going to get Ponder. and we're not going to get preordained. Like this is where it is. And I think there's a lot of ways to use it. And I think it's especially powerful in conjunction with the next card on the list that I have in my S tier, which is Faithless Looting.
I still thought this was a lie.
And this one was 100% a surprise to me. I did not think that this card would show up again. But
I mean, this is one of those cards that can warp a format, right? Like this is one of those things that like everyone, including myself, for months and months and months was like, looting's fine, it's okay. Like it doesn't do too much. It's like you have to build around it. And then like once it was gone, I think everyone was kind of like, yeah, it kind of was too good, wasn't it? It kind of was too good.
Yeah.
And
well,
now
I
we're
think
just bringing it back.
the main thing is it really can warp a format around it. If you think about,
exactly.
I don't think Inquisition of Kozilek and or Brainstorm are things that cause as much forward design problems as Faithless Looting does, because now every time you have a card that can possibly be some kind of graveyard payoff, you have to think about how good it's going to be in context with Faithless Looting in Historic, unless they just don't care. And so, we have dredge pieces in Historic right now. It's not all of them, but it's enough to try to put together a deck like that. We have God Pharaoh's Gift in Historic. That's a whole thing that you can get into with this. And there's other things going forward. Whenever anybody wants to do something that's really powerful for a lot of mana, if you want to cheat it back into play with some historic payoffs, like that's just possible as a combo from now on. And so now Faithless Looting is always going to be there enabling it. Now, the thing that I'm excited about, of course, is that a lot of people feel like, Blue-Red Phoenix is going to be legit with Brainstorm and Faithless Looting now. And I tend to agree. And that makes me excited because I love those cards. I would love to play them again. It would be awesome if, we get the whole bird gang together and it's Stormwing Entity and Phoenix and everything good and all the cards that I love in one deck. I think it's possible. I'll certainly be looking for it, but I'm extremely worried that it's really that's not going to be the most powerful way to use this card in Historic, and then everybody's going to be just bummed that it exists.
Here's my prediction: is that like first 2 weeks, you're going to see people trying to perfect a Phoenix deck, because Phoenix, for whatever reason, is the deck that people refuse to give up on, and more power to those players, especially since looting has died. I think we're going to see that, and I think, like you said though, Dave, is that we're going to realize fairly quickly that there's something worse and a little more heinous, a little bit more broken, and we're not going to be happy about it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait until 2 years from now when people are like, but what if Brainstorm and Faithless Looting are just like the identity of Historic? And I'm just going to be like, oh my God, like we're having this discussion again,
I put these two cards in my tier A. Brief explanation is because I don't think they automatically go into a number of existing great decks, but I could be wrong about that, because like Faithless Looting is like an automatic, probably in Rakdos Arcanist. Mm-hmm. But like Arcanist isn't really a tier 1 deck right now. I think it's like in the low 50s. I'd put it at tier 2 compared to the other stuff. But it's also going to add something to like the Hollow One, Flameblade Adept based cycling decks, I think. Those are still marginal. They're still being refined, but I think there's a lot of potential there. And I think a lot of the discussion of looting is wrapped up in that potential. And it's there. I'm really hoping it can be non-broken. But I'm also concerned that it's going to be one of those cards where you're like, 1 mana Faithless Looting, or turn 1 Faithless Looting, and that's going to be like turn 1 Once Upon a Time. Yep. And it's supporting a bunch of different strategies, and I think that's what ultimately made it too good for Modern, is it was just doing too much for too many different things.
Yep. But I love Faithless. At the same time, I love playing it, and so that I will be when it's around.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so our next card down, I think you and I agreed on it, although you've now stepped all of your cards down a tier.
Oh, no. They were there before.
No.
I would... Okay.
From this point forward in the discussion, I have them 1 tier higher than you, but I think that our general order of cards is the same.
Yes, I think tier doesn't matter as much as like kind of our order of impact.
Right, so we think the next most impactful card is what?
Probably Time Warp?
Time Warp.
You think? Yeah,
I think so.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, 5 CMC. Take another turn. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a powerful card, right? Like it's probably going to be part of some legitimate enough strategy, but I think like is Time Warp the type of card? Time Warp historically has not been the type of card that just gets thrown into a deck, right? Like it's sort of like it's kind of a build around.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't generally see people run this for value unless they have a way to recur it in some kind of long game plan. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen here, too, is that people are going to try to rebuild the old Nexus of Fate, Turbo Foggy, Tamiyo decks that were around in Pioneer for a while and also were a bit of a plague in Historic. And I think it's probably going to work.
Yeah, I mean, you could Torrential Gear Hulk this. There's options.
Yep. And so I'm not going to go too deep on it, but other than to say, I think this is pretty like it could be deck defining. It's probably not format defining, but it could be really annoying.
Yeah. On the same sort of tier as this is like, I have like sort of the Storm type cards that for some reason are getting printed in Historic. We've got Grape Shot. We've got Mind's Desire. We've got Tendrils of Agony, Weather the Storm.
Mm-hmm.
Man, like, what are they doing, Dave?
Why did they print a bunch of Storm cards into Historic? I don't know.
It's called the Storm Scale?
It is called the Storm Scale.
Yeah, let's just do it. Why not?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think that these clearly form a bunch of powerful payoffs for Spells Matter decks, essentially, right? And I'm not thrilled about that. We already had an okay number of... there already were a few decks that did stuff like this. I'm thinking about Kinnan and Paradox Engine and all that kind of stuff as being another kind of like Eggsy type deck. I think that this deck will probably end up in a similar place where you're going to cast Mind's Desire 5 times in a turn and then do something, maybe one of the cards you get is another Mind's Desire and you go off again and just kind of keep going from there.
That sounds good.
Yeah. Doesn't sound good to me. Definitely not the type of deck that I'm going to play. I mean, I love that people love these cards.
Yeah.
But
we have no rituals. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of broken stuff to support them. And that's kind of like the Phoenix problem, right? Which is like, sure, here's some payoffs. And these payoffs, I think, are likely better than Phoenix, not Arclight. Is it Arclight Phoenix? Yeah, Arclight Phoenix.
Yeah.
But the tools that exist to make Storm a thing are not very good. So are we going to get there? I don't know. I think there's a lot of work that will be involved in making Storm a thing, simply because the rest of the deck is not as efficient as it needs to be.
Yeah. I mean, for my part, I think that the best one out of this whole group is going to be Mind's Desire. And it's just going to be a great way to make these blue spells decks go. And maybe they have Aetherflux Reservoir as another thing that they do as part of it. And maybe they don't. And maybe there's all kinds of other things there. But I think that that's the Storm deck that actually works in Historic. Like you said, without rituals, without Lava Dart, without, spells that are free, essentially, it's a little bit harder to make Grape Shot great. Although I still think Grape Shot's going to be useful somewhere. And I even think that there's a chance that Tendrils could be good in the right type of deck. Certainly, Weather the Storm is just an annoying sideboard card to have around to make a deck like Phoenix not as good.
Yeah,
which is a bummer, but it is what it is. I do wish there was something that had like better answers to these cards available. Like Whirlwind Denial is available in the format, and that counters a bunch of spells. But like, I don't, there's no Counterflux or something like that. I mean, not that was a great card against Storm either, but I don't know if the tools are available to fight Storm in Historic, and that's probably what annoys me the most.
Yeah, could be an issue.
Okay, so that's our S, A, and B tier cards.
Yeah, like the stuff that will either make new decks a thing or will be seeing play, for sure.
All right,
and like my C tier, and my C tier is basically stuff that I think will see play. Like maybe it's a role player, it's maybe something that's going to be pretty good, might not be very good, but like it's stuff that I think I'm going to see cast against me or by me at some point, but not really like break open the format or push it in any real hard way. And there's a bunch of those, of course, but I think there's definitely some call outs we should make here. One of the ones that I wanted to talk about is Sign in Blood. because I think that has some potential in some shadow decks. I think Stan does as well. It's just a pretty efficient card advantage card in black. I'm sure I'm going to see a cast. I'm not like looking forward to crafting 4 of these day one. I think it's just it's a card. What is it? Black.
Target player draws 2 and pays 2 life. Yeah,
I think it's fine.
I'm kind of a pass on this card for what it's worth.
Yeah,
but
I think it's adequate. I think it's going to be a C to D card. One of the things though I want to talk about, maybe we should save this for next week, and it's Abundant Harvest. Do you think let's save Abundant Harvest for Stan, Dave?
Okay,
because I think we got a bunch of Dave cards up here, and let's talk about them.
Yeah, I mean, the couple of cards that I would highlight here, of course, the first couple are Electrolyze and Lightning Helix. I think that these are 2 cards that open potential. They're efficient removal with fringe benefits, and they can go to Dome, they can kill a creature, they draw cards, they can gain life. I think these open up a lot of different things. Electrolyze can be great to open up kind of Jeskai control or Is It control kind of options, especially with the cantrip ability. It's great against decks like Elves, where you get a chance to kill a couple of 1-drops, basically. And Lightning Helix is just a nice piece of versatile removal that helps you kind of last a little bit longer. So it can be good against burn. It can be good in burn mirror matches. I mean, I think both of these cards are cards that are worthwhile, but don't really have clear homes right now.
Yeah. That's the thing is like, I don't think Lightning Helix makes like a burn deck more of a thing. Like no one's casting like Lightning Strike right now. And of course you get life gain off of Lightning Helix, but you know what I mean? It's like Lightning Strike is not even sniffed at being played really.
However, if Wizard's Lightning becomes good, then suddenly Lightning Helix could become good to help continue to build out that suite.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, we might get there.
Yep. Okay, so 2 good versatile burn cards. Next on the list, we recently did an episode about this card. It is Ephemerate.
Yeah. I mean, I know someone named Everett Mohan is excited about that, aka Aspiring Spike. People are definitely going to be testing Blink decks. Like this will be a thing. I don't know if they're going to be good, but it's definitely going to be something that people are experimenting with and messing with.
I mean, if you look at the cards that are available for comes into play effects, that Yorion deck that we were just talking about in Historic from the PT, a deck that wanted to run 4 Yorions, it's because there are things to blink with it. And so I think that having it on a sorcery is sometimes better and more resilient than having it on a creature. Maybe it's some kind of combination of the two, but you do have Skyclave Apparition in this format. Blinking Yasharn isn't the worst thing ever to get an extra land. Blinking a Night of Autumn to like kill multiple, cast Disenchant multiple times or gain life can be good. So there are plenty of targets for this in Historic.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's a good card. It'll be good. It'll be something fun. I don't know if it's like, top tier, but it'll be fun. That's what matters.
Yep. Okay. Next card on the list. Well, we're winding down to the end here.
Yeah.
And this is an old favorite of mine from way, way back. Memory Lapse.
Yeah, people are hyped about this card more than me.
Have you ever played this card? Yeah. So this is a card that is sort of like Remand, realistically, in a lot of ways, but in a way it's even more powerful because it takes away one of your opponent's draws instead of giving you a draw. And so Memory Lapse is counter target spell, put it on top of your opponent's library, so they have to redraw it next turn. I am super excited to play this card in Mono Blue Tempo. Honestly, like it's a perfect card for that kind of deck where what you really want is time and being able to answer any spell at the right moment with this card, buy an extra turn, get an extra attack in, make them draw a card that they probably don't want to redraw again. It's part of the reason Aether Gust is so good. I mean, Memory Lapse, that's what it does well. I used to love to play this in a deck full of flying men and unstable mutations back in the day. Bunch of 1-drops and two mana counter spells sounds familiar.
Yeah, sounds familiar for sure. I think there's some people I know who think this is like more of a B or even an A tier card. I guess I always have issues with like these cards that aren't hard counters. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm forever asking, how do you use Remand? When do you use why? When and why? Like, what's up with Aether Gust? Like, these cards don't seem that good, but of course they're like much better than I give them credit for, or that I understand them to be. So yeah, Memory Lapse is probably pretty good. It's probably going to be like a B tier card. You're going to see it and probably be annoyed by it. I know I will.
Yep. All right, last couple of cards here. Mana Tithe, I think, is a really cool card. I don't know if anybody really needs Force Spike, but I think it's a card that people love having access to, and I think it's very low risk to have in the format. So glad it's here.
So yeah, it's definitely low risk because I don't think it's very good.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a weird specialist card. You don't see it in Modern very often, but sometimes you see people make good use of it. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, you know the pain of playing around like a sensor here and there, but like Mana Tithe doesn't cycle. So like just sort of becomes useless while sensor never becomes truly useless. But right. I think that there, like you said, there's application. You're going to see a Mana Tithe cast against you a few times and be kind of annoyed.
Yep, absolutely.
Stone Rain? What do you think? What do you think about Stone Rain? I think people want to cast it.
I don't know. I mean, there's a reason they don't print 3 CMC land destruction anymore or very often in standard sets, I should say. And I think it's one of those things where I'm like, it's a classic spell. I'm glad it's available in a format that's called Historic. I'm not sure that it makes like Ponza suddenly amazing, but I think to be continued. We'll have to give Stan a chance to talk about this next week once we all can think about these cards a little bit more than we have so far.
Right on. I mean, that's kind of like the majority of my C tier. Like I said, I want to save Abundant Harvest for next week. I think it's an interesting card that deserves more time than we really have. My D tier is kind of everything else, like stuff I don't think is going to see play in any real way. I could be wrong about like Crux of Fate.
No, you're
like, is there a better 5-mana black sweeper?
I mean, there's a better black sweeper. It's called Extinction Event.
I mean, but there's always problems with Extinction Event. I mean, there's a lot of annoyance there.
Yep. There's a lot of not annoyance too, though, because of Exile and the fact that it's 4 CMC. So
yeah. I mean, the D tier is like stuff that's already outclassed in this format. Like Day of Judgment is a worse Wrath of God, and people are not maxing out on their Wrath of God right now. It's either that or it's too expensive or it's too just useless, I guess. Like next week, I think we can have a better breakdown on like the economics and then like how this impacts the format and like what WotC is doing with Historic generally. Definitely good to have Stan and perhaps the special guests take on those things. Dave, anything else before we wind this show down?
I think that's it. I mean, I think that we all really believe that these cards are going to have a big impact on Historic. And so like we've been telling people, or like Shane intimated earlier, don't run out and build any of the Pro Tour decks, because I think we literally do not know what Historic is going to look like after these cards show up. And in particular, some of them could make really big changes.
Right on. All right. That wraps up this week's show. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to our podcast. You get the latest episodes as soon as they come out. Maybe get that auto download thing going on. You don't have to think about it. And if you use Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and a review. We love to see that. If you want to submit us a question, you want to ask us something about Modern, Pioneer, Historic, you can tweet at us at The Dive Down, all one word. You can email us, thedivedown@gmail.com. If you want to support us, help us keep doing what we're doing, you can join the Patreon. Joining at any tier gets you access to the super secret Slack server where the citizens of the nation are constantly interacting. Patreon.com/thedivedown. Again, shout out to Mana Traders sponsoring us. Sign up for Mana Traders using promo code THEDIVEDOWN, all one word, 15% off your first 3 months of raining Magic Online cards. Untapped.thedivedown.com. You can download the Untapped Arena tracking software. Do it. It's easy. It's free. As always, special thanks to the bands Nowhere and Spaceblood for letting us use their music. And until next week, get out there and rate some cards.